Welcome to the Village Vision podcast, where community collaboration and care converge. I'm Dr. Crystal Morrison, and I'm honored to be your host on this incredible journey. As a firm believer in the power of a united village, I'm thrilled to bring you inspiring stories, research, and projects that break down the barriers in child and family care. Through heartfelt conversations with experts, advocates, and those with lived experiences, we'll showcase the transformative impact of collective support. So join me on the Village Vision podcast as we explore the remarkable collaborations that lead to better outcomes, foster a sense of community, and inspire action to improve care for ourselves and everyone around us. On today's episode, I'm here with Sarah Conway. Sarah is the Autism Ministry Director at Northway Christian Community. She also has a master's degree in special education, a long history of family involvement in supporting individuals with disabilities, and a family member diagnosed with autism. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. I had a chance to meet Sarah recently and also check out the Autism Ministry. And I can tell you that it's a really great example of the work that we're highlighting here at the Village Vision. It's this great example of working at the intersection of community, education, family, and faith communities.
And so when I was in college, Northway started talking about wanting to do something for families who had kids on the spectrum. Our lead pastor at the time had just been in a lot of conversations with families who had kids on the spectrum and had different types of disabilities, and realized a really common theme was that they weren't able to go to church, and it just broke his heart. So they started talking about wanting to do something, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like two of my favorite things all combined in one. I would love to do something like that. Little brother is who he is to me, making sure that he still has access to the gospel and still gets to go to kids' church just like every other child. And even like my other little brothers, the fact that they get to be in church and my in-laws get to be at church is such a huge reason why I do this, and love that Northway has this ministry because it allows my own personal family to be able to go to church together.
It's great. And having visited the site, I mean, this is an absolutely beautiful entire wing of the church with sensory rooms and just a really amazing space.
But that feeling that parents get of, I can tell that my child is a burden to you right now, even though you're not truly saying that they're a burden, but whether they're making quote unquote too much noise, they're causing too much trouble, they are too much for you to handle, the room is not accommodating for them, whatever it might be. That was a lot of people's experience I would say probably like trying to attend Northway. Again, not that they were ever not welcome. At the time, we weren't equipped. But I also know that a lot of families have tried to attend other churches and would within 5 minutes be called back like, hey, please come get your kid.
Right.
I know families have said that at other churches they have been, asked to leave, not even welcomed in the first place, really all coming back to that common theme of the church was not equipped to handle the kids.
Yeah. And that's, I know so many different people that are out there listening have probably experienced that. And I think Northway is great in that the community is of an inclusive mind to begin with. And that's so important. But, my own experience as a parent, when your child is disruptive, there's oftentimes a lot of people looking at you and, sort of making a judgment as to your quality of parenting and any number of different things. So I want to turn now and talk about the Autism Ministry today. What does the Autism Ministry today look like at Northway, and what does it all involve? Tell us about that.
So our Autism Ministry right now, I tell people it's still in the early phases. We soft launched at one of our locations in Sewickley on Christmas Eve of 2021. And so that location has been open for a year and a half, I guess, coming up on 2 years now. And I'll tell you more about what it looks like. But then as a whole, we are getting ready to expand at our Wexford location later this year, and then to one of our other locations in the Dormont area in the next couple of years as well. And we have been focusing on the kids' church side of things. And so, yeah, the Autism Ministry is an inclusive program. And so our goal is to have the kids in the kids' church classroom as much as possible. And we really designed the program around what you do see in most schools right now in terms of inclusion. And so whenever a family wants to be a part of the ministry, they typically inquire, and then we connect and share kind of like mission, vision of the ministry and talk about next steps.
What are some of the things that you and the other leaders of the ministry do to make sure that the volunteers and teachers that are working with children in the autism ministry, how do you prepare them, train them, really work with them to be an effective part of the ministry?
So for leaders who want to serve in the autism ministry, they also go through a pretty thorough onboarding process. So we actually use kind of like an application process where they inquire about wanting to serve in the ministry. And I always tell people experience is not required, but I more look for people who are on board with our inclusive mission and align with our theology of disability. And so they, inquire about wanting to serve. They kind of go through the application interview process. And then from there, I really walk them through.
So how have you seen the program grow with your first site? How have you seen it grow over the past year and a half?
It has been amazing. We started with 4 families and 4 children who, like I said earlier, really helped us kind of like pilot the program.
Right.
We're all involved at Northway in some capacity and knew that they were going to be the families that really helped us launch this ministry. And since then, really just by word of mouth, we don't do a ton of outward advertising about the ministry, but we always encourage families like, if you know people who could benefit from it, please share that with them. And over the past year and a half, we have grown to serving around 30 families in the ministry.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yes. Yes. And they do age. So we start at the preschool age and go up to 5th grade. And I didn't mention this in detail earlier, but we did just start kind of like a middle school, high school hybrid program for Sunday mornings. I think a lot of our families are just starting to talk about it more, post on Facebook groups that they're in. I mean, like those communities are so tight knit. And that is something that from the very beginning, we've tried to be super aware of it. I've really tried to educate our staff and our leaders around that. When you have families who have kids with any type of disability coming to try something new, you basically have one shot with them. And if they at all feel unsafe, they feel like their child is unsafe, you're pretty much done, which they need their children to be safe. And I completely understand that. And so we have really worked hard on that first impression and really wanting that the parents to know and feel not only safe, but welcomed, like I said, from the minute that they even connect with us for the first time.
You're typically the one person that can calm your child down or center your child. And so it's very, even though you want to be included as part of a bigger body, it's very hard to, be separated from that child when you know that they may be very anxious or act out or not respond well to the environment. And so it's a very stressful experience. One of the things, Sarah, that I find so refreshing about the autism ministry at Northway is that it's really part of this bigger journey of inclusion by that church.
Really been kind of the driving mission for us as we do think about what it looks like to expand. I will say from the get-go, because inclusion has been our mission for the kids side of things, I've always said that I do not envision making a separate worship gathering or even a separate program for adults with disabilities, because if our goal is inclusion for the kids, then once they age out of kids church, inclusion is our same goal.
Absolutely.
And so instead of creating a separate place for them to worship, it's making our spaces more accessible. It's making everything more accessible, and then really educating and making, like I think I said earlier, our congregation more inclusive and more welcoming.
And I know when we talked before, Sarah, I can imagine that there are lots of other faith communities out there, community-based organizations that are thinking of creating something similar, whether it's an autism ministry or a disability ministry. But what are some of the most important things that you think that someone should consider when they're thinking of creating an autism ministry or a disability ministry?
I would say the first thing, because this has always been how I'm guided and how we really do kind of like spread the mission to other people, but is having our own mission statement. As I kind of mentioned earlier, our goal is for families to be able to come as they are, because our mission at Northway is to lead all people to know, experience, and follow Jesus. Also give them the opportunity to be in church and be in community, and give their siblings the opportunity to also take a break, to be in church, to be around people their age, and really just welcome their entire family unit into the church body is one of the biggest blessings and biggest honors in the world.
That's so exciting. Well, thanks again, Sarah. And thank you. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of the Village Vision podcast. I hope that you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation today. I know I have. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, leave a review, share, all of those things. But thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Village Vision podcast. Take care, and let's keep shining a light on the power of community, collaboration, and care. Thank you.